Good evening, and welcome to Eleanor, and another edition of Riveted. When we last heard our storytelling, I just wanted to say a couple of things before we get started. First of all, if you haven't signed up for the open mic and are interested, the sign-up sheet is down here, right on the edge of the stage. We're going to take a break after the first 4 storytellers, so you can sign up then. 5-minute slots. I'd also like to mention that we've had a little change here, which I'm very excited about. I now have some help with curating and hosting the show, and I would like to say thank you to Katya. Katya graciously offered to help, and she has done an incredible job already. A lot of the people that are here tonight from LA are here because of her. And I really, truly appreciate it. I've really enjoyed working with you so far, and I'm looking forward to working with you going forward. So far, yeah. Don't fuck up. Yeah. I'd also just like to say a couple of things in regards to the Supreme Court. No, I'm not going to go off on that, but you know. Also, we had a guy who was going to tell a story tonight. My friend Mike Malone called me at the last minute, and he said, I have prostate cancer. So I would like you all, if you are so inclined, to just send him some good vibes. So he's going to rejoin us in a couple of months when his treatment is completed. I mean, I guess you don't really complete it, right? It's just ongoing. And then the other thing is, one of the other people who is largely instrumental in this phenomenon here is Rick Sanchez. And Rick called me yesterday and said he had COVID. So he was unable to join us this evening. We are very fortunate, however, in that his replacement tonight is pretty freaking fantastic. We lucked out and are going to be hearing a story from Ruby Cooper. I'll tell you a little bit more about Ruby in a little bit, but just from that sound you just heard, you kind of get the idea. Ruby's a special person. So I think that's really all I wanted to say, other than welcome, and let's get going. Our first storyteller, Gabby Conti, is the author of 20 Guys You Date in Your 20s, published by Chronicle Books, available wherever you buy or listen to books. She's the co-creator, co-executive producer, and host of the podcast, Am I Dating a Serial Killer? The entire first season is available only on Audible. She hosts and reports entertainment news for Hollywire on Samsung TV, Snapchat, and YouTube. She has contributed to Cosmopolitan, Elite Daily, and Pop Sugar. Gabby's live show is called Story Tasting. She co-hosts and co-produces with Jonathan Bradley Welch every other month at the Blending Lab on 3rd in West Hollywood. Their next show is Friday, August 12th at 7 p.m. Please welcome to our stage, Gabby Conti.
Hi, how are you guys? Good. This is such a cool spot. I've never been here before. Yeah, it's beautiful. And now I'm going to tell you a dark story. Okay, so it was July 18th, 2018, and the reason why I know that date precisely is because it was my 31st birthday, and I had just moved to New York City from Los Angeles after spending my 20s in LA and making every single decision in my life based on my career. Once I hit 30, I started thinking that what if I put love first instead of my career? So when I was living in LA and my boyfriend of a year and a half got a job in New York and asked me to move in with him in Brooklyn, I said yes, because I was convinced that all you need is love, right? So I uprooted my life here, I moved to New York, and that takes us to my 31st birthday, July 18th, 2018. I'm in Soho, and I'm on a mission to find the perfect birthday dress. which is the kind of thing you do before you get married and have to get a bunch of white dresses. You find the perfect birthday dress. And shopping in mid-July is very difficult because you're dealing with the past, like, 4th of July sales, and it's almost fall, and it's very confusing. So I just went to look for my current birthday dress. It's very confusing in stores. And I'm at Bloomingdale's, and I'm going through a rack of overpriced dresses when suddenly I hear a voice of a woman who says, "Oh, my goodness, I love your dress." Which makes me question everything, because why am I buying a brand new dress when the dress I'm wearing that I got from Nordstrom Rack is compliment worthy? Which is why women buy anything, to get compliments from other women. So, and I turn around and I met with these very intense amber eyes that kind of look through me, and they're thickly lined. And as we make eye contact, her face drops and she says to me, "I'm so sorry to do this, but I'm a psychic. And I have a very, very important message to tell you. I never do this, but I really need to tell you this message. Is it okay if I tell you this?" Now, most New Yorkers would know that if a psychic comes up to you in the tourist destination that is Bloomingdale's in Soho, it's a scam. But I had just moved from Los Angeles. I have crystals. I believe in astrology. I know my big 3, Cancer, Gemini, Aries. And I was like, this is a sign. This isn't a scam. This is a sign. It's my birthday. This is my birthday gift. So I say, "Tell me." And she proceeds to tell me that I am destined for great things, and my third eye is closed, which is blocking me from achieving my destiny and my life, and I am not supposed to be where I am, talking to a psychic at Bloomingdale's in Soho. And so of course I'm a little naive. I'm like, okay, well, how do I think this is like the big, I think she just told me this is like the biggest thing. I need to solve the third eye being closed. So I go, okay, well, how can I open up my third eye? Like, is this like, what can I do with this? And she goes, well, you're in luck, because I can open up your third eye for $5,000. And she says it like she's doing me a favor, you know, like, this is for you, $5,000. And and that's $5,000 I ever spent. Thank you very much. Of course I said no. I thanked her for her time, and I proceeded to go on this surprise date with my boyfriend. Had no idea what it was, and he took me on one of the best dates you could possibly think of. He took me to an omakase dinner in Tribeca, Taylor Swift's neighborhood, and then took me on a subway ride, and the next thing I knew, we were at Madison Square Garden, and it was Billy Joel's 100th concert at Madison Square Garden. Like, I was in a New York state of mind, baby. But in the back of my head, I was like, well, if this is my life with my third eye closed, what is my life with my third eye open? And this was kind of in the back of my head. And it wasn't until a couple of days later I went to go meet my friend from college for dinner, and I saw a sign. It was a pink neon sign, and it read psychic. So I went to go get a second opinion, as you do. And the psychic told me the exact same thing without me prompting her. My third eye was closed, and she would open it for me for $2,500, which is why you should always shop around, even with psychics. But of course I said no, and I went to dinner with my friend who I've known since college, and I was telling her about what I was dealing with, and she warned me about our mutual friend who actually went into debt, spending thousands of dollars to psychics, who is not Christy Carlson Romano, but might as well could be. And she was telling me this, and I was like, okay, yeah, that can't be me. But it did feel meant to be that I had this dinner with my friend, because her and our lives were very similar a couple years ago, because she had uprooted her life from Manhattan to New Jersey, which is pretty much the same difference from LA to Brooklyn. And she had done it for a guy she was with, and he proposed, and she thought this was her person. And up until this point, I think deep down I believed that my boyfriend was who I was meant to be with. And she reminded me, look, I just want to let you know, if the reason why it's closed is because of your relationship, it's not the end of the world. like, it's not the end of the world if this doesn't work out because, you know, we broke up and then I moved back to my home in Manhattan and I went on Tinder and I met my boyfriend and now to this day they're married, they have a kid, she's so happy. So knowing that, I think that was something I needed to hear. Because if I was being honest with myself and if I figured out how to open up my third eye for free, the reason why I was closed, and maybe you guessed this from the whole 31st birthday, omakase dinner, Billy Joel's 100th concert, like, what am I, on The Bachelor? Like, that is not real life. That's not how most people celebrate milestones like a 31st birthday. Like, something was off. And if I was to look deeper into the relationship, my boyfriend and I, we had a pattern. And the pattern was that we would go from these, you know, extreme, grand, romantic gestures to I would feel heartbreak and I would be really sad and we would have this, and I had a Google Doc where I wrote down every single time my boyfriend made me cry. And I was still in the relationship, you know? And instead of looking at it like, oh, I should leave, these are 30 entries of why I should leave, I looked at it more like I could work through this because I could make this work, this is who I'm meant to be with for some reason. And I, you know, I would joke that I didn't need makeup remover because I would cry myself to sleep most nights. But like the reality of it was that every time I would want to leave, he would do something like the Billy Joel concert, even early into dating. Early into dating, we had a shared Spotify playlist. We had a shared notes app of a bucket list of things we wanted to do together. We had a shared photo album of pictures of us, which I couldn't post on social media. Now looking back, probably because he had another girl in his life. And we had all these things, and even though deep down, I remember thinking when I was moving from LA to New York, I felt this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel right. But I was like, no, Gabby, that's just saying like, don't do this, don't make this sacrifice for love, because you've never made a sacrifice for love before. Do this. This is worth it. Try it. You never know. So I started to realize that, and now I recognize what was going on as love bombing, which you might have heard of the word. It's basically when someone uses grand gestures as a way to manipulate and control their partner. And my mother is a narcissist. And this became more and more clear because when I moved to New York, I was closer to my mother who lived in Connecticut. So I would spend more time with my mother in person than I ever had before. And I started to see a lot of similarities. You know, they say you turn into your mother. They don't say you date your mother, because there were so many similarities of how my mom showed her love to me and how my boyfriend showed his love to me. And that's why I never left in that year and a half, because it felt like home. It felt comfortable to me. And there were so many situations where I'm like, oh yeah, my mom love bombed me my whole life. Yes, we would get into these explosive arguments because we were Italian, but also when we get into these arguments, then she'd take me on a shopping spree. And so love was measured to me from an early age by possessions, and not from what love really is just someone to have your back and support you. And something that I didn't know of yet was like consistency and being steady in a relationship, like actually having that. Having your partner feel like home and not like a sacrifice. I finally realized this Thanksgiving 2018, and I moved back home with my mom and dad, and I honestly I packed a suitcase, I was ready to leave, but there still was some what if, like I still was wondering if this was a mistake. And when we went to go move out all of my stuff from the apartment, my parents and I went, and I left my key. My ex, now ex, had decorated the apartment with a Christmas tree, and there were presents under the tree, and there was a whiteboard that said, I miss you, Gabby, with a broken heart emoji, saying, I love you, Gabby, with a broken heart drawn on this whiteboard. And that was his like last attempt of love bombing. And thank goodness my mom was there, and she, as a narcissist, could recognize another narcissist and be like, don't fall for it, don't do it. And luckily, I think if my parents weren't there, I wouldn't have had the strength, and I probably would, I don't know, who knows, maybe still be in that relationship, maybe not. But luckily, thanks to my parents, I lived with them for a while, and then I realized that my home was Los Angeles because that was where my chosen family was. And a year later, a year after the psychic told me my third eye was closed, I think my third eye was finally open. I was back in Los Angeles with my chosen family, and about a couple of months after my 32nd birthday, I went on what would become my last first date with a guy I met on Bumble, because yes, dating apps do work. And now we're married, and he's here. And there's never been love bombing. I never doubted how much my husband loves me. I never felt that. I never started a Google Doc with all the fights. I never cried myself to sleep. And I'm proud to say that the only toxic relationship in my life right now is with our cat, Owen, who goes from letting me rub his stomach to scratching my hand. But he's a cat, so that's okay. And I guess my lesson is, never pay a psychic more than $20, especially if she comes up to you at Bloomingdale's. Thank you.
Conti. She is on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter as It's Gabby Conti, and has a website, www.gabbyconti.com, so you can follow her. Our next storyteller, Nima Karasi. I hope I pronounced that right. Nima Karasi has performed at the Moth, Mortified, and Risk. He comes from a long line of storytellers and is also the host of several podcasts like Break or Broken, My Gastric Sleeve. Wow. And, and the upcoming Happiness Challenge. Yay! Follow him on Instagram at Nima Speaks and Facebook Nima Karasi. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to our stage Nima Karasi.
The stairs are perilous over there. Hi, everybody. Hi. Oh, that was great. So, I don't know if y'all know this or not, but the founder of Match.com, his wife left him for a guy she met on Match.com. It's amazing. So that's going to come into play in a minute. So I'm on Match.com, and I connect with this beautiful girl named Maha, and her last name is Salama. And normally when we're talking about relationship stories, we don't say the full name of the person, but first of all, I got her permission. But second of all, it's important because although I'm not Arab, I'm Iranian, thank you, she is, and in Arabic, ma salama is how you say like, bye and thank you, or have a good journey, or something like that. And maha, which is how Iranians say us, are two things that I've heard having a lot of Arab friends and then growing up in a Persian community. So I have heard one iteration or another of her name my whole life. So we connected immediately. And she thought I was Arab, which is a huge compliment. And so we started dating, and she had a very strict religious upbringing, and all her sisters wore the headdress, the hijab, and she didn't because she was like a rebel. And her father was very religious, and none of her family members drank, and nobody had a divorce until then. And my family's like the opposite. Like my family, everyone like went on their pilgrimages and did all their fun stuff, but like my father's a big whiskey drinker and eats pork and loves bacon, and he's like cheers all the time. So it's like a very big difference in our families. Anywho, so we date for like 2 years and everything is great. And then finally, like I'm just kind of tired of sneaking around, and she's met my whole family. I haven't met anybody in her family. So I said to her, we have to take this to the next level. I'm ready. I want to meet your father. I want to meet your mother. Let's get the ball rolling. She goes and talks to her dad, says, Dad, there's this boy, he's interested in me, he wants to talk. And he goes, yeah, have him come over like Saturday at 5 o'clock. So I go to the Persian store, I get all these Persian sweets. If y'all don't know, Persian sweets are basically fried dough with honey and rose water. It basically just tastes like sweet grandma perfume. And you're not into it unless you're raised on it. And that'll also come into play in a couple minutes. So, I go to the house, it's like 4:45, I'm just giving myself like the pep talk, like you got this, they're gonna love you, it's great, it's fine, it's 5 o'clock, I gotta go. So I get out of the car and I grab the sweets and I grab the flowers for her mom, and my phone shows 5:01 p.m. and I get a text from her, and the text says, "Don't give up on us, ha ha ha." And I go, "Be right there." So I go, I knock on the door, and her dad answers. And her dad, now I know that from her descriptions that he's like a big dude, but he is a big dude. He's like 6'6", he's built like a shit brick house, and he's just very like looking down at me, and he just very like sternly looks at me, and he goes, "You're Nima?" And I go, "Yes, I'm here." And he goes, "You are here to talk about my daughter?" And I go, yes, I'm here. And he goes, "Okay. You are Muslim?" And I go, "Yes, I'm Muslim." Now, on a side note, I'm not the father anymore. So on a side note, we are different types of Muslims. Iranians tend to be Shiite, and most Arabs tend to be Sunni. And there's not a really big difference, but there is like culturally. So he just looks at me and he goes, "You are Muslim?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm Muslim." And he goes, "But you are Shiite." And I go, "Yes, sir, I'm Shiite." And he goes, "There is no such thing as Shiite Muslim." And I just hold my breath, and he goes, "And there is no such thing as Sunni Muslim. Islam is Islam. Welcome to my house. Come inside." And I was like, "Oh, this is great." So we go in, and I'm sitting on the couch, and the dad is there, and the mom and Ah's there. And he goes, "Why do you love my daughter?" And I tell him why I love his daughter. And we have the whole conversation, and it's great. And he goes, "Okay, let me know when you..." He's not French, I don't know why. I just can't do an Arabic accent. I apologize to everybody. So he goes, "Let me know when you want to take this to the next level." And what he means is like having like family dates where like The Godfather when Michael goes to Italy. So like aunts and uncles and everybody going on like long walks with you, making sure you're not touching each other. And like family meeting each other and whatnot. So anyway, so I'm like, okay, great, this is awesome. So I go home, I'm super excited, and for the next 2 weeks, she basically like ghosts me. And this is a girl that was like sneaking out of her house and coming to my place like 2-3 times a week. And so I'm just thinking like maybe her dad's like onto her, or now he's a little bit more suspicious, so she can't really sneak out. So there's a couple texts hither and thither, there's some phone calls, but nothing like serious. And so finally I'm like, I'm gonna be so cute, and I send her a little text and I go, "Don't quit on me," or "Don't give up on me," or whatever I said earlier that I don't remember. And so she goes, "Ha ha ha, let's meet for lunch." And I go, "Great." So she tells me this restaurant, I go and meet her at the restaurant the next day, and we go and we meet, we order the food, and everything is so great. I'm so happy to see you. And the food comes, and she looks at me, and I look at her, and she goes, "We have to break up." And I go immediately into salvation mode. And I say, "Maha, listen to me. There is nothing that you can say that will make us break up. We are meant to be together. I love you and you love me, and whatever it takes. If you want me to learn Arabic, if you want me to stop drinking, if you want my family to stop drinking, I don't know how, but I'll stop the beer out of my grandpa's hand every single time. If you want me to convert to Sunni, I don't know how that works, but I'm sure money's involved. Anywho, whatever this takes, I will do because I love you, and there is nothing you can say that will make this not happen. We are meant to be together." And she says, "I got married." 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. So I go, "What?" And what happened was, she told her dad that we were an item, and her dad's response was, "I didn't know you were in the market to get married. So let me put the feelers out and see if there's any vibes." And her brother had a friend who always had a crush on Maha. And he said, "I'm interested in dating your daughter." And so then they got together and they did all those family dates, which is why she was ghosting me, because she couldn't come out because she was going on these like long walks with her whole family. And turns out they got married in secret because his visa was gonna expire. And so he was like, if we could just have a courthouse marriage, and then worst case scenario, this doesn't work out, and we'll give you an annulment or whatever you want. But if it does, then cool, and I get to stay here, and then we'll get a lawyer or whatever. And so she did. And spoiler alert, they got married, they had 3 kids, they live in Jersey, he sells used cars, I don't care. But they're happy, and that's what's important. And after that, I learned a very valuable lesson, which was don't use Match.com. Bad things happen. So then I went on Tinder, and then I found my wife. So Gabby, you're right. Dating apps work, Bumble and Tinder, but steer clear of Match.com. Thank you very much.
Razi. So I'm almost afraid to say this, but I'm actually dating online right now. Yeah. Which one am I not dating online? So just to digress for a moment, back in the day, I think it was the Tonight Show when Johnny Carson was hosting. There was a joke about Vice President Dan Quayle. Some of you may remember Dan Quayle. And the joke was along the lines of that Dan Quayle was so dumb that he thought Roe versus Wade was the decision that Washington had to make about how to cross the Delaware. Right? Yeah. So, anyway. Our next storyteller, Jane Kobayashi, graduated cum laude from UCLA with a BA in design. She also holds a BFA in graphic design and packaging from the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, where she has also taught. She has 24 years of design experience, 17 of them with her own design firm, 5D Studio, based in Santa Monica. A life-changing experience in 2017 prompted her to begin to challenge herself in new ways. The story of that experience and how it brought her to celebrate life with every breath both led to and is the subject of her debut as a storyteller. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jane Kobayashi.
what the fuck moments in my life. And I'm not being irreverent, this is truly the only way I could think to actually describe these 3 events. And until this last month and a half, I didn't even relate these 3 events into one thing. So this story has kind of evolved since Steve has asked me to do this. And what I mean by these kind of events is, you know, when something happens in your life where you absolutely had no control, and it was gonna happen regardless of what you did, or you couldn't even avoid it if you wanted to. So, and these are all near-death experiences. So a month and a half ago, some friends and I went to Sedona, and I'm sure you guys all know that Sedona has all these amazing vortexes. And people say that those energy vortexes can be healing, or they can be calming, they can help you meditate. And we went and decided to go on a 4-hour hike with a shaman. So this shaman, his name was Akal, took us on this hike on Thunder Mountain. And Thunder Mountain has a few of these vortexes. One was a temple called a stupa that was built by Tibetan Buddhists. And what you do there is you walk clockwise around it while you're meditating, no talking. And it's this area that they call Peace Park. And so the shaman had knowledge about all the different spirituality in the world. And he took us to this medicine wheel and taught us about that. And while we were walking to these different places, he started talking about Peru. And he said, in Peru, they believe that shamans are kind of called to become shamans. And how that happens is sometimes they're hit by lightning, but they survive. And he said there's a word, banco, for those people who are hit 3 times and they survive. And all my friends turned around to me and they said, "Oh my God, you have to tell him your story." So that's what I'm going to share with you. When I was just 11 years old, I was in middle school, and it was pouring rain, and I was going to a night youth church meeting. My mom was going to take me, so we hopped in the car in the garage, and she pulled out. We didn't have one of those door openers or closers, so I got out of the car and went to the garage door, took the metal handle, pulled it down, and right at that instant, everything turned white. Bright, bright, bright white. And I didn't know what happened. And I was holding onto the metal handle, and I turned around to see my mom and her face. Her eyes and her mouth were huge, and she never said any profanity. But I know her face was, what the fuck? And I was like, didn't know what happened because I was fine. So I got back in the car and we found out that all the electricity in the house went out for a few seconds and came back on. And then someone said, oh, well, it's because she had on tennis shoes with rubber soles, so she was grounded. And so that's why she wasn't electrocuted. So we kept that story for decades. That was why. And didn't talk about it really. It was not a big deal because nothing happened. But recently, when I was revisiting all this, I looked it up, and actually that's a wives' tale. And if you wore rubber shoes, it wouldn't do anything. They're like, what is it, half an inch of rubber gonna do when you have all that electricity like soaring through? So now I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm not quite sure what happened then. Fast forward 20 years or so, and I am delivering my first child, Daria, who's here tonight. And after 20 hours of labor, I start getting a fever, and the doctor comes in and says, well, we're worried that the baby's gonna get the fever, so we're gonna do a C-section. And I was like ballistic, because 20 hours of labor was like, oh my God, and now you're just gonna, cut her out after all that. Beside the story. But anyway, baby was fine, they took her out, and that, I was hooked to IVs and things, and that next morning, early, the nurse came in to check my IV, and then she walked out. And when she walked out, I woke up. And right when she shut the door to go out, I started to feel my stomach knot up, and then it felt like all my organs were shutting down, and then my lungs. And I was like, oh my God, I have to sit up to breathe. So I started hitting the button to sit up on the, those hospital beds. Luckily, my husband was sleeping in the room. That woke him up, and he saw that I was struggling. And so he hit the nurse's button, and immediately all these people come rushing in, and I'm up above watching. And I'm up above watching all these people putting oxygen masks, hooking me up to things. You know, it was like this flurry of activity, and I'm just floating up there watching. They throw my body onto a gurney and rush me to the ICU, and I'm above, floating, just above. And the weird thing was, everything was white, right? Like they say that, but I'm telling you, it really was white. And calm. I mean, I was completely calm. Like, I wasn't sad or upset or anything, except for when I saw my husband walking next to me, I just thought, oh my God, he's going to be a single parent. And that was like the only connection I had with what was going on. So they rushed me into the ICU, they put me in the room, and all of a sudden I'm looking up at the ceiling. It's like I just landed right back down, and I can hear the nurses saying, all the fluid has cleared out of her lungs and her heart has just pumped it all out. I had congestive heart failure. So they couldn't believe that I just like went back to normal. And there are some medical explanations later, but I'm not going to go into that because that's not part of the story. Okay, so fast forward one more time, 20-something years, and before I tell you this, the shaman sent me an article about the whole Peruvian shamanism. And in that, they say that with the 3 near deaths, they believe the first time the person dies. The second time, the person is brought into the other spirit world. So, you know, I'm just thinking, oh my God, I was floating above. And if the person doesn't hear the calling, because a lot of times the calling is very quiet, then it gets louder, and in this article it said until it's a roar. And by that they mean they take you out of your life so that you will stop and start examining your life as it is. So they're stopping you in your tracks, basically. So I have a design studio, and we had just moved to a new one in Santa Monica on Main Street. And it was my first day in this office, dropped my son off at school, parked the car, and I remember thinking, okay, I can carry this amount of stuff, I'll have to come back for this, because it was my first day and it was the last bits of stuff that I had to take. And that's all I remember, because 2 days later, I woke up in the ICU. And I was hooked up to all these machines. I was intubated, I couldn't talk. And I'm just there, and my kids are there, and my ex, and they're all, do you know where you are? Do you know what happened? It's been 2 days. I mean, all these questions, and I'm just, yes, what the fuck? Staring up at that, I don't know what happened. No recollection, and 6 or so months later, the neurologists say that that's a normal thing for your brain to not grasp a hold of anything that traumatic because it's protecting itself. So I have no recollection of any of it, but I did meet a person who witnessed the whole thing. And so I was crossing the street, green light, in a crosswalk. A guy driving a truck was making a left turn. He only had, he didn't have his left eye or his right hand. And it turned out that he had been in Afghanistan and was an ex-Marine. And a bomb had detonated and he lost his eye and his hand. So, you know, talk about the meeting of these worlds. I mean, he made a left turn and never saw me because he didn't have an eye. And of course, I found out that it is legal to drive with one eye, and it doesn't even have to be 20/20. It could be 20/40. You know, I'm just like, wow, that's kind of, you know, you gotta be really careful crossing the street. So I ended up with 11 broken ribs. My lung got completely sliced open. I had a broken shoulder, broken pelvis. I now have a lovely titanium screw in my pelvis. Brain trauma, I lost my sense of smell and taste completely. And he ran over my hand, my left hand. Nothing broke, which is crazy, but I did have a watch on, which got, pretty damaged here. And that watch is stuck at the time of impact. So I have that as my souvenir, I guess, of that time. But even though nothing got broken in my hand, there was a lot of scar tissue, so that required 4 surgeries over a year and a half, 3 years of PT, twice a week. And I think I had 4 months on my shoulder. It's this long process. But the amazing thing is when I was let go from the hospital, you have to prove that you're going to have 24/7 care. And since I wasn't married at the time, but I had, and my daughter was in college, so she was away. My son was in high school. My friends stepped up. And my one girlfriend made a schedule, and I had 30 people sign up for shifts for 3 months. I was never alone. Somebody was always there taking care of me. And I am not a person who likes to be vulnerable, so this lesson is huge for me. But, I had half my head shaven. I couldn't walk. I couldn't even get out of bed to get in the wheelchair. They had to shower me. They had to feed me. We're talking being completely vulnerable. But, the beauty of it was I got to spend all these hours with these amazing friends. People that I would see maybe once or twice a year for lunch, now were in my home for, 8 hours at a time. And that was a complete blessing. So, just to tell you how crazy this is, I'm gonna tell you two things. First, the guy, my friend, actually Brian, is here. He called me one day and said, "Hey, I know you have PT and OT today. Why don't we meet for lunch in between?" And I said, "Okay, that's great," because I had like an hour to kill or something. So I walked across the street and we met for lunch, and we're sitting there, and he's just had a meeting with a client. And he's like, "Oh yeah, we just had a meeting, it's great." And he's actually good friends with this client. He says, "Well, she got married this summer." And I said, "Oh, that's great," and I can't remember if he went to the wedding or not. But anyway, he goes, "Yeah, she got married to an ex-Marine with one eye and one hand." And I'm like, "What the?" Brian, is that the guy who ran me over? And he's like, "No, there's no way. No way, no way." He goes, "I would have heard about an accident. I would have known something happened. Someone would have said something." Anyway, it was him. So the chances of all these things happening are just kind of crazy. And it's the thing of knowing whether it's coincidence or fate, I don't know. But the last thing is I realized when I was thinking about this that when I got hit by lightning, I was 11. When I had congestive heart failure, I was 33. When I got hit by the car, I was 55. So then again, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? So these are like just mysteries, right? You don't know, and I'm just gonna say that with these kind of moments that you don't have a choice in, you do have a choice after, right? And I never gave up, never thought that I was going to remain the way I was, and which is incredible to me because when I would go to PT or OT, my hand therapist would go, "You are the only one who actually does the exercises before you come in." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "People don't do it. They come in here and want us to fix them. And then they go home and they do whatever, and then they come back in and they want us to fix them." And it never even crossed my mind. So, I'm a big believer in that you have to do and put into life what you want to take out of it, right? And when life gives you all this most awful things happening, I'm here for a reason. And so when I told this story to the shaman, he said, "The only reason why you are here is because you're supposed to tell this story." And he said, you made a contract when you came into this world, and this is the contract. So when Steve asked me to do this, even though I didn't want to do it, I'm here doing this, and thanks for listening.
I think I need a moment. So we're going to have one more storyteller, and then we're going to take a 15-minute break. I'd like to introduce Ty Fance. Ty has been a featured storyteller at the National Storytelling Network and Storytelling Association of California Storytelling Festivals, as well as Ubuntu Storytellers. He has performed at the Story Salon, Tales by the Sea, Storyworthy, The Otter Story Hour, Better Said Than Done, and Strong Words. He also produced a long-running storytelling show called Off My Head Storytelling. Ty's stories feature his journey into and through fatherhood, reflections on marriage, and his colorful childhood. His stories are also featured in his book of autobiographical short stories entitled Off My Head and Over the Fence. He wrote and directed a short film, Chump City, about a young man's struggle to fit in moving to Compton. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to our stage, Ty Fance.
That was beautiful. This will be quick because I got to pee. I don't know about you guys. I drank that beer, man. I should have done that. Okay. I love storytelling. And it came to me when I least expected it. And I'm one of the guys that if you're trying to make a point, you pretty much got to hit me over the head with it. So here's how it went down. About 15 years ago, I tried comedy. And apparently I was okay with it. Because at the time, this was an open mic in Altadena, California, at a place called the Coffee Galley. And in the front row that night was this guy in his late 80s. He had this salt and pepper beard, short afro, and this big smile. I couldn't even do the jokes without noticing this guy. So I get off stage, and I don't really know. I'm doing stuff, but I don't know. But he says to me, hey, you're a funny man. You are a funny man. You're a funny man. He said his name was Leslie Perry, and that he was a storyteller. And I was like, what? Storyteller? Well, what kind of jokes you do? I mean, what kind of stories is it? He's like, fairy tales, folk tales, and kind of stories you would find in a library book, right? And then he invited me to his show. But I gotta let you guys know, I wasn't that interested. I mean, because as a kid, I dug Green Eggs and Ham and The Emperor's Got New Clothes and The Beanstalk and The Goodnight Moon, all those books, I dug it. But as an adult, I was really into these personal, real, honest, vulnerable stories, right? Where you connected with the storyteller on a deeper human level. I had found that need for that. So I was hesitant, but I went. Someone said, go. Lester Perry, as I said, was in his late 80s, and he was about 5'6", maybe 145, 50 pounds. But when he got on stage, that man was 10 feet tall. His voice boomed into the audience, and that smile and that energy just lit up every inch of the auditorium. Man, he embodied and was just animated with his storytelling. He embodied the characters, with his movement, and the animals. He became the animals. And for the first time in a long time, I actually enjoyed folk tales again, and the stories he was sharing. Right, I was mesmerized. I mean, I was just locked in, and he took me on these journeys. He got off stage, and I thanked him. I said, man, thank you. Man, you're a good storyteller. You are awesome. He said, you can do this. I'm like, no, man, you're a storyteller. I'm a comedian. You're a storyteller. You can do it. Well, he inspired me. I wrote some stories. And one of the stories was about this not so perfect relationship I had with my oldest daughter. You see, she lived with her mom, and her mom and I didn't really work out, so we broke up. And I ended up marrying someone else, and my wife and I had 2 children of our own. And it was being there with those 2 children day by day, night after night, that I realized I had not been the best father to my oldest daughter. And so the story I wrote was about me making the attempt to do better by my oldest daughter. A friend of mine said if you can tell a good story when you're writing it, that if you get emotionally locked into it, that's a good story. Well, I had a hard time right now. Man, I never cried so much unexpectedly because I'm writing these things. So anyway, so I decided to do that one at the next open mic. No, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready, man. I stumbled and choked up and hesitated, and it was really difficult to tell the story because every time I'd say something, the reality came to me in my visions, and I had a hard time sharing it. So I'll be honest with you, I couldn't wait to get off stage. And if I'm really honest with you, there's a lot of people in the audience that couldn't wait for me to get off stage. It was painful. But the guy in the front row that evening was Leslie Perry. And when I got off stage, he came over to me and said, "Hey man, you're a funny guy. You're a funny guy. You really are. But you're a good storyteller." Yeah. And when you get that story worked out, you're gonna touch people. And I was like, I ain't doing that story again, man. Are you kidding me? I ain't doing that story again. No, you should work it out. I'm not doing it. Well, shortly after that, Leslie was diagnosed with ALS, and his health deteriorated rather quickly, and he passed on. And I was really shocked how much we had connected and how it affected me. And I found myself trying to go to something that was more safe. And I decided that storytelling wasn't my thing, and that I'd just go back to doing comedy, because comedy for me was easy, and it fed my ego and gave me what I needed to feel good about myself. So I kind of gave up on the storytelling, and I decided to do some comedy. Fast forward about 3 months, and I'm standing in the light bulb aisle at Home Depot, where I worked in the electrical department, when this lady I had never seen before comes down my aisle, right? Comes down the aisle and stands near me and starts to look at the light bulbs. Meanwhile, I'm stacking and organizing them. And when she asked me, "Can you help me with the electrical bulbs here, because I don't know anything about them?" I said, "Sure I can, I work here, I could do that." So I helped her out. She ended up needing a daylight light bulb because it's a whiter light, and she wanted to be able to see in her bedroom when she read. And that "You won't be wrong with this, go for it." So I give it to her, she puts it in her cart, and it begins to push away. Then she circles back to me and says, "I'm sorry, this is gonna be a little awkward, but my name is Karen, and I'm a pastor here in Monrovia, and I am compelled to say something to you, but I need your permission." And I'm thinking to myself, uh-oh, here we go. She's gonna save my soul, here we go. She said, "No, but I just need your permission, but I have to tell you this." I said, "Okay, go ahead," but I took a step back. And she says, "You know, when you were helping me, I couldn't help but feel this energy about you. It was bright and positive, you know, and it just felt good. And I felt compelled to tell you that." And she said, "Whatever you're doing, whatever it is you're involved in, keep doing it. And if you have doubt, don't have doubt. It's going to be great. And I went, oh, okay. I appreciate that. No, it's my pleasure. And then she walked away. And I went, what the hell was that about? But that afternoon I felt, you know what, I'm going to work on that story again about me and my older daughter. So I went to Altadena, which is north of Pasadena, and they have this park up there with an outdoor amphitheater. And it's pretty cool because during the day, there's hardly anybody there. It's a great place to go and work out your stories out loud, right? And I just thought it was great. So I go there and I am working on my story, right? And I'm struggling with it and everything. And about halfway into the story, this elderly man in his late 80s with a cane walks into this space. There's usually nobody there. But today he walks into this space, says nothing, and then sits down in the front row and watches me as I do the story. I get finished, and he quietly just raises his hand. And I go, yes? Is that a true story? Goes, yeah, it is. Is that your story? Yeah, it is. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that story. And then he gets up and leaves. Again, I go, what the? All right, okay. So I was encouraged, so I kept working on the story some more, and about 15 minutes later, a guy in his late 50s wearing an Adidas navy blue jumpsuit jogs into the area and then jogs right in front of the stage in place, looking at me. And I'm cool, I got an audience of one, go ahead. So I'm doing my thing, and about 15 seconds in, he says, hey, what you doing? I said, well, I'm working on the story I wrote. Oh, hey man, that's a good story, I like that story. I like storytelling. Yeah, man, that's great. Hey, you know, I don't even know why I'm saying this stuff to you. I said, well, if it helps you, my brother, you're the second dude today that said some encouraging things about what I'm getting into. He goes, oh, I get it. You needed confirmation. That's right, you needed confirmation. And then he just jogged off. Again, I'm like, what's going on here? I work it out a little bit. It's rough, but I pack up my notes, and then I go up to the coffee gallery to go over my notes and get myself a banana smoothie and just sit down, right? So I'm sitting down at the little table, and right about that time, Tom walks in. He's a friend of mine. Now, what you need to know about Tom is that he's in his late 40s, and he's a staunch believer in the positive energy of the universe. And he is a harmless conspiracy theorist. So Tom and I have some pretty fun conversations. So he got like this Earl breakfast tea thing, and then he comes over and sits down next to me. And we chat, and then I share with him what happened today, right? At which time he respectfully sipped his tea, leaned in and said, you know the universe is trying to get you a message, right? I'm like, okay, here we go. No, man, it's real. Somebody's trying to get you a message. Who do you know who cares about you and wants you to be successful? And I'm like, well, you. Not me, man, not me. My wife, maybe my kids, I hope. You're a funny man. You are a funny man, but you're a better storyteller. Message received.
Hi, fans, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a 15-minute break. Talk amongst yourselves. Help yourselves to the bar.